If you play Demon Slayer, you may have noticed a small patch hit last week. A patch that a lot of people, myself included, didn't know what exactly did to the game, as the patch notes only actually revealed the usual improved game stability, which really could be anything. Well, as it turns out, this stealth patch actually fixed a lot of the 60 frame per second issues that we had in the game, to the point that we might start getting more and more tournaments played in 60 FPS. If you guys are into Demon Slayer, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. I've been covering this game since release, so if you don't want to miss anything, make sure to subscribe. And let's see what this patch did. When 60 FPS was first patched in, it felt like a completely different game from 30 FPS. The biggest issue was actually demons. Comparing how fast they were able to regenerate health, it was just insane how big of a difference there was. And it wasn't just that, the game felt different. The way it buffered inputs required us to practice different timings for optimal combos. There was definitely a feeling like things didn't work the way they were supposed to. Though I also want to take this chance to correct something that I said on Twitter. One of the things I mentioned for 60 FPS was Shinobu's poison damage behaving differently, and that was actually never the case. I was shown a comparison video where Shinobu was dealing double the poison damage in 60 FPS compared to 30, but I later learned that that video was using the 60 FPS mod that the community made for Demon Slayer and not the 60 FPS patch. I should have double checked, these things happen, my apologies, the Shinobu poison was never a problem. Still, the demon health regeneration, that was enough for people to say no. This isn't what a 60 FPS mode is supposed to do, it might as well not exist. But just as usual, Sega and CyberConnect were listening. When releasing Enmu and Yushido, they also released the balance patch that we covered on the channel and actually fixed the demon health regeneration in 60 FPS. They did not include that in the patch notes at all, we just had to figure that out for ourselves. I didn't make a video on this topic back then, but Fly Kunai actually did. I highly recommend this channel if you guys are really into Demon Slayer competitive. As Fly Kunai highlights in the video, the 60 FPS mode wasn't perfect yet, even though they fixed the health regeneration. The main issue that remained was certain combos dropping, and he shows two examples. First, it's this Nezuko combo, which is actually one of her main routes. In 30 FPS, the flying kick connects, but in 60 FPS, Tanjiro lands and doesn't get hit. The second example is the Enmu 2-bar optimal combo, which had a similar issue. The final part of the combo, where you have to catch the opponent falling with a grab, would simply drop. And that, folks, is what this stealth patch came to fix. The Enmu combo totally works now, which tells me they figured out what was wrong with it. Maybe it was recovering time when falling. I mean, 60 FPS means double the frames, which means if the character recovers 1 frame sooner than in 30 FPS, that could be why these combos are dropping. But unfortunately for Nezuko, this did not fix her combo at all. After the third attack, the flying kick still drops. And this really sucks for Nezuko mains, as this is a really common route. It's one of her optimals if a combo starts with heel kick, which, let's be honest, happens quite frequently. But if we analyze the footage side by side, you can see that the character actually falls at the same speed. The issue with falling recovery seems to be fixed. What I think is happening with this combo specifically is an issue relating to Nezuko herself. Her flying kick starts at the same time in 30 FPS and 60 FPS. Nezuko jumping up is exactly the same, but she starts coming down a few frames faster at 30 FPS. She takes a bit longer to charge her kick at 60, and this honestly looks like a very easy fix to the future. That said, Nezuko mains immediately hit the lab, and it was none other than Fly Kunai that found a new optimal route that works in both 30 and 60 FPS. So if the competitive community decides to make tournaments in 60 FPS, Nezuko is still slightly nerfed, but nothing as significant as losing one of her main routes. There's also a Zenitsu combo that apparently doesn't work in 60 FPS, but it's a bit irrelevant. It's this route where he dashes up 3 times. He cannot get this third dash in 60 FPS. But this route doesn't deal more damage in any frame rate, it's just a stylish thing that Zenitsu mains probably won't miss. What makes the combo drop, however, seems to be the increased recovery time from Zenitsu whenever he lands from an air dash. But he only has that increased recovery when he's doing it in a combo like this. If you just air dash in neutral, you don't seem to get increased recovery. It's very weird. With all that said, even though they fixed these routes, the game still feels different. And it's not just because it has double the frames, the way inputs work is actually different. I feel it mostly on Nezuko because that's the character that I do most of my optimals with, and the way inputs are buffered feels completely off. For instance, I'm just gonna press the attack button twice with a little delay, almost like staggering my pressure, fishing for a hit. As you can see in 30 FPS, I'm able to get the first 2 attacks most of the time. Now I'm gonna do the same in 60 FPS, and sometimes I get it, but other times the second attack just doesn't come out. This clearly shows that inputs are being buffered differently. Now, is this specific example important in a real match? Yeah, but not a lot. Sometimes you just press buttons while delaying the buttons because you don't want to mash. Sometimes the opponent is baiting your mashing, so you're just, pressing the button twice with a little delay, trying to hit confirm something, but also being safe in case the opponent is baiting you. But yeah, it doesn't happen very often. What does happen very often is something like this. The Nesco optimal combos use jump canceling, which is something that I spent some time practicing in 30 FPS, and now I'm able to do it very consistently, even online, even with a big delay. Now, it's still possible to do all of these routes in 30 and 60 FPS, they mostly work the same, but even now that I've practiced in both frame rates multiple times, I still feel like I need to sit down and practice for a good 5 to 10 minutes to get used to the new timing whenever I change frame rates. Whenever I'm playing in 30 and switch to 60, I'm dropping a bunch of combos because my timing feels off, and the same is happening now if I practice at 60 and go back to 30. I would absolutely love it if they figured out a way to make the inputs buffer the same way in 30 FPS and 60 FPS. Because if tournaments start being held at 60 FPS and then I go back to playing ranked at 30, yeah, it's not gonna be a good time. That said, I love playing this game at 60 FPS right now. The increased frames really feel like they improve your reaction time. You can see abilities coming a lot more clearly. I feel like I'm a better player and I don't get cheated or hit by something that I clearly reacted to. I think the viewer experience is a lot better too if you're just a spectator. And while the patch isn't perfect like we just saw, I think the benefits of 60 FPS are definitely worth it. Korea has shifted their tournaments to 60 FPS a while back, and I really think Europe and North America are gonna follow. With one small caveat, it's probably gonna be PC only. Since the game isn't exactly the same at 60 and 30, I think tournaments on consoles will still be at 30 FPS. And that's simply because PlayStation 4 and Xbox One cannot do 60. So if you're holding a PlayStation tournament and you let players play at 60 FPS, what could happen is a player is gonna play a match at 60, and then round 2, he's gotta switch to 30 FPS because he's playing someone on PlayStation 4. And jumping between the two frame rates really seems like a bad idea because the games behave slightly different. That's the whole reason why ranked matches are still locked at 30 FPS. It's because the old consoles cannot do 60, which is a shame because after playing 60 FPS for like 15 minutes, I find it really rough going back to 30. It's like the game just doesn't look as good, it doesn't run as well. But speaking of PS4, you guys keep asking in the comments, did they fix the input delay issue on PS4? With my current setup, I'm getting between 10 to 12 frames between the input and the response in training mode on both the PS5 version and the PS4 version. So I would say it's fixed. I don't have an actual PS4 to test this with, but from the previous tests, the delay was the same, the console didn't matter. And actually, testing the delay in 60 FPS on the PS5 version, I actually got between 8 to 10 frames of delay, which is even better. So hey, it got fixed. I don't know if it was this patch or a previous patch, but now PS4 and PS5 should play with the same delay. That said, as long as the old consoles cannot do 60 FPS, it will be very hard to make 60 FPS the norm, especially since ranked matches are still played at 30. If they can figure out the input buffer issue and make it the same for 30 and 60 FPS, then yeah, I can see everyone transitioning over to 60. For now, it is very playable in both frame rates. It just takes a while for you to adapt if you're transitioning from one into the other. And jumping between the two in the middle of a tournament sounds like a terrible time. Also, ultimates are still at 30 FPS. What's the deal with that? Before the 60 FPS patch even happened, the PC mod actually unlocked the frame rate and ultimates were also at 60 FPS. Why isn't this officially supported? Is there a performance issue of some kind? Also, the netcode is still pretty bad. The online delay definitely needs an improvement, but I fear that's something we won't see in the patch. That's kind of a big fix, maybe in a sequel. Fingers crossed. But I gotta praise these guys. I gotta praise Sega and CyberConnect 2 because they deserve it. Every single patch has made the game better. They understand what the game's problems are and they have been tremendous at fixing them. This kind of support is something that sometimes we just take for granted. So I wanted to acknowledge the good work that's been done with Demon Slayer. Even though there's still a lot of work to do, these updates have done nothing but improve the game. And that's gonna do it for today. Have you guys been messing with Demon Slayer in 60 FPS? How's it been so far? Do you like the game more? Do you like the game less? And how hard was it for you to transition from 30 to 60? Let me know in the comments. And as always, thank you very much for watching. My name is Globku and I'll see you next time. Bye!